So we know that microphones are a form of transducer. But what are some of the main types of microphone? Well, really, in the modern recording studio, the three main ones that you'll encounter are those of dynamic, condenser and ribbon microphones. As well as there are other types of microphones, but they're less common in the studio. These might be things like PZM microphones, parabolic microphones, wireless microphones, and even the strange and mysterious crystal microphones. So we know the main types of microphone. Now let's look at the first type, and that's dynamic. And this is really quite common in any recording studio. Dynamic microphones are based around the electromagnetic principle, very much like a speaker. Just like a speaker and just like a transducer, they turn one form of energy, in this case acoustic energy, into an electric energy. Dynamic microphones are velocity sensitive, which basically means it's the speed and the power, the sound pressure level that hits the diaphragm of the microphone means that they send a stronger signal as an electric current. So these types of microphones are really, really good when you've got something loud like a snare drum or a guitar amplifier that you're wanting to record. So how does a dynamic microphone work? Well, they use this principle of electromagnetic induction. So there's a coil of wire, and this coil is sat and it circles a magnet. Okay, the two are held in place via the housing of the microphone. Connected to the coil of wire is the microphone's diaphragm. Now, all microphones actually have a diaphragm. This is basically the part of the microphone where a sound wave hits it. It's what happens after the diaphragm that determines the type of microphone. For example, dynamic, condenser, ribbon. So in this case, you've got your sound wave. It hits the microphone's diaphragm. This is connected to the coil that pushes that coil over the top of the magnet. This causing electromagnetic induction, and then it sends a current, a representation of that sound wave, down the leads and down the electronics of the microphone. So we do actually have a lesson where you can build your own dynamic microphone from a tube of Pringles. The link's in the description below. By all means follow it and enjoy that lesson. So the advantages and disadvantages of dynamic microphones. Well, dynamic microphones are relatively cheap and rugged. They're strong and durable. There's videos on YouTube of guys smashing the hell out of a dynamic microphone, chucking it around on stage, and it still works after. Dynamic microphones are really, really good for high and sudden SPL. That's sound pressure levels. So they're really good, as we said, at snare drums, kick drums, toms, guitar amplifiers, bass amplifiers, live on-stage vocals. Dynamic microphones are a lot cheaper than, say, your condenser or ribbon microphones. Also, dynamic microphones are resistant to moisture. So they're, like we said, they're more rugged, they're less likely to break. Some of the disadvantages, though, of dynamic microphones are that they're normally tailored to a certain frequency. So they're normally built to do one thing and do that one thing really good, but you couldn't use it as an all-round microphone. Dynamic microphones typically have reduced high frequencies. You know, if you've got something like really scratchy violins or hi-hats and you want to get that detail and clarity from your recording, maybe a dynamic microphone's not the way to go. Also, dynamic microphones are typically built around one polar pattern. So a polar pattern, we'll find out later in the lesson, is actually where the microphone hears and picks up a sound source best. So dynamic microphones are typically cardioid or hypercardioid, meaning that they They're really good at picking up the sound source that you point them at, but they're not very good at picking up the ambience or other sound sources if you've got more than one. Finally, dynamic microphones are known for having a lack of clarity. If you really want that detail, maybe a condenser or ribbon microphone is better. All microphones have a diaphragm. The diaphragm is the area of the microphone where the sound hits. Now, this could be a small diaphragm or a large diaphragm, and these are the two main types that you'll find of dynamic microphones. The small diaphragms, you've got the classics like the Shure SM57 or the SM58. These are two small diaphragm dynamic microphones. You've also got the Sennheiser MD441. This is a really good spot close microphone. Excellent on drums, fantastic on guitar amps. Large diaphragm dynamic microphones. This is the large diaphragm. So these are typically a lot better for lower frequencies, kicks and floor toms, anything like that. You've got the classic AKG D112. That is a floor tom microphone, kick drum microphone. You'll find it in nearly any studio around the world. You've got like a broadcasting microphone often used for vocals, interviews, and that's the Shure SM7B. Really good for vocals and speech, but maybe not used for instruments in the recording studio. Finally, Sennheiser MD421. A great microphone again for amplifiers, anything like a guitar amp or a bass amp. That microphone, fantastic. Just like the Shure 57 and 58, that microphone will be in nearly any studio around the world.